Well, howdy folks. Welcome back to the G5 Philippines channel. I hope you're having a great day. Today I am coming at you live from Center Mall in part of San Carlos City, but it's probably one of the more beautiful areas in San Carlos. In San Carlos, and then of course in this park. I've done a couple of videos in the past over here, but today I'm going to be talking about something that's really become a big part of my life, of course, mine and my wife's life, and that's raising kids in a mixed Fil-Am or Filipino-American household and here in the Philippines. So for those of you who may not know, my wife and I have three daughters, our Tres Marias, as they like to say here in the Philippines. Our oldest is 11, our second daughter is 7, and our youngest is going to be turning 4 here in the next couple of days. I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about some of the joys as well as some of the unique challenges that we've encountered, along the way. When you have kids, you don't necessarily think about how you're going to be dealing with the day-to-day in 11 years, and so the days kind of come at you as they come at you, and you parents, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, and by the way, this is going to be fairly short and to the point. I'm not going to go deep and wide on a lot of points. I just want to sort of touch and provide you with some, food for thought. The first thing that I thought about is getting attention, getting eyes. Our kids, I'm just speaking matter of factly, our kids just so happen to be fair complected. They took after their daddy. And of course, my Filipino wife is a beautiful cinnamon brown complexion. So naturally, when we're out and about, people tend to notice. We stand out a bit. And I'm not trying to sound any particular way. That's just the reality. Now, one thing that really does bother my wife, and don't get me wrong, she laughs about it, but at the same time I know it bothers her, is when people come up and ask if she's the yaya or the nanny. Now, she's tiny. She's 4'11", and our oldest 11-year-old is almost as tall as she is. And so even though my wife is 33, she looks young, so people just kind of jump to the conclusion that she's the nanny rather than the mom. And, it's not anything offensive. People don't mean anything bad about it, but it's just a reflection of how people perceive things. And the kids, we've all kind of gotten used to it, but it's just one of those little dynamics that we deal with, okay? The next thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is special treatment in school. This is an interesting dynamic that we've observed, and it's how our kids are treated in school. One thing I like to do every year is to meet with their teachers and sort of let them know that, hey, there's no need, don't treat our kids any differently. We're not tourists, we live here, and they're just one of the students, they're just one of the kids. They speak perfect Visayan, so there's no reason for them to be singled out for any reason. But recently, as a real world example, our oldest daughter, we found out that her teacher, for some reason, speaks to her in English. And now I will say that Filipinos if they do speak English, they like to practice it. And so maybe that's what it is, because the other kids may not understand English. So it's just an opportunity for her to exercise her English speaking skills. But meanwhile, the rest of the kids are spoken to in the local dialect, which is Visayan. And again, I don't think it's specifically on purpose necessarily, but what it can feel like is that she's getting some sort of special treatment. And we don't want that. We just want to blend in. And so we want her to be treated just like her classmates. So it's something that we have to sort of stay on top of, because it does affect how her classmates see her. And we feel like balancing that is it can be tricky, but it's just, again, it's just another thing that we deal with. It's not a bad thing. It's just another thing. The next thing I wanted to talk about is raising our kids in, with our faith beliefs. And so raising our kids, I come from a long legacy, a generational legacy of being, in every church service. If the doors are open, we're there. And while in today's age, it's a little bit more sporadic than that, I want to raise our kids in church and make that a standing part of our family life. Now, if you've watched my videos, you probably already know we're Protestant evangelical Christians, and while Catholicism is the dominant faith here in the Philippines, raising our kids to know our faith it's really important to us. But at the same time, I have a fascination with learning about other belief systems, whether it's Catholicism or Seventh-day Adventist, or there's a lot of other ones. And it's not anything that I push onto our kids necessarily, but I do try to educate them about why their friends might go to a different church and why we go to ours and all of that. The Philippines, by and large, is very community oriented when it comes to faith. And being part of a church here is a great way to stay connected and grounded. And it's important to me that our kids understand the difference or the differences and have a solid faith-based moral foundation. Okay, next up, and these are not necessarily in any order of importance. These are just the things that I wanted to talk about. Education, and not just immediate elementary, junior, high school, long term. So one of the big reasons we moved to the Philippines, I should back up and say, it has become one of the big reasons that we moved here. Again, when I go back to pre-moving to the Philippines, I wasn't necessarily thinking about, I was definitely thinking about the quality of education, and I did, due diligence on that. And you might be surprised to know that the quality of education here is strong. Sometimes when my wife and I are helping the kids with their homework, we realize that they've got to be 2 or 3 years ahead of where we were at their age, for me in the U.S., for her here in the Philippines. But beyond elementary, high school, higher education in the Philippines is so much more affordable. I mean, a fraction of the cost than it is in the U.S. And not only that, but the degrees are totally recognized internationally. So again, for us, raising our kids here gives them the opportunity to have a very affordable, high quality education without the massive debt that can come with a U.S. education. So yeah, there's that. Next on the list, and again, these are things that you might not think about when you start your family, but citizenship and birthrights. Now, a big part of raising kids abroad is ensuring that they have their proper citizenship paperwork. It's not the first thing on our minds when we're having kids, but it's definitely something that we have to deal with. Our 2 oldest girls were born in the U.S., they're in Nashville, so they automatically got their U.S. birth certificates and their Social Security stuff. But because they were born to a Filipino national, they also have the birthright to Filipino citizenship. So we went through the process of registering them a report of birth to the Philippines Embassy to get their Filipino birth certificates. But our youngest was born here in the Philippines, so the process was reversed, where we had to go through the U.S. Embassy to get her U.S. birth certificate, passport, and Social Security number. And that process was a good bit more complex, involving travel to Cebu and interviews at the U.S. consulate. And just by the way, I'm going to be making a comprehensive how-to video on that whole process soon. So keep an eye out for that. It'll be linked right up here when it's ready. Okay, so moving right along. The next thing on my list, one of the biggest challenges, especially for our 11 and 7-year-olds, is the peer pressure around having a phone. And no, they don't have phones yet. And yes, that's by design. But a lot of their classmates do, and the pressure is a real thing. We've chosen to limit their exposure to social media for now, but that makes it tough to explain why they don't have phones when all their friends do. Still, we manage by sticking to our values even when it's not the easiest choice. I mean, the thing is, sure, I don't want our kids to feel picked on or to do without a phone, but even Facebook requires you to be, I think the minimum age is 14 years old to have a Facebook account. So we've more or less established that age 14 will be when we decide whether or not the child is ready to have a phone. And by the way, it may not be a smartphone. It may very well be a clamshell that just does voice and text. I don't know, we'll see. But even with our 11-year-old, we are beginning to run into things where, we do need to provide her a tablet for schoolwork and things like that. And we do. We compromise, but we're pretty strict. And without going any deeper than this, just to say that we just want to protect our kids from the pitfalls that social media and that kind of stuff can bring. So another thing I wanted to just touch on just real briefly, and something that you might be thinking about, is healthcare, when it comes, or even childbirth. We live in a provincial, what they call a provincial city. Even Manila is in a province, but when they say provincial, they're talking more rural or something like that, urban or rural. And where we live near San Carlos City, and it's about 125,000 population. So it's not a small town, but it's, we don't have the big malls and things like that. But we have 2 hospitals, and there's a public hospital, and then there's what's called a private hospital, and we generally use the private hospital. The healthcare is supposed to be better, and that's where we had our youngest child was born. And just to let you know, I actually did a comprehensive video on her birth, and that's maybe I'll stick that up here. But that whole experience was actually very smooth, very easy, very quick. And 4 years later, we have a beautiful 4-year-old kid. But in terms of available health care, no worries. Generally, you're going to have, depending on where you live, of course, but generally you're going to have adequate health care. And if you do need more, like specialists or things like that, if you don't have it in your local city, then you can always travel to a larger city and find that kind of care. So real challenges mixed with real joys all together. Raising kids in a mixed cultural household here in the Philippines is full of both challenges and joys, from dealing with the attention we might get in public to making sure they're raised with a solid moral and faith-based foundation. It's an ongoing, as with raising kids anywhere, it's a daily thing. But honestly, that's my family is my joy. Really and truly. The Lord is just so good. I just feel so blessed. I wouldn't trade anything. And I'm sure that many of you have your own stories about raising kids in a multicultural environment. How do you handle the cultural differences? What are the things that you're running into or dealing with or observing? A lot of these things are not critical. It's just, our observations. So please drop a comment below. And as always, thanks for watching, especially if you watch to the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you in the next video.